This was a suit I'd be wearing to accept my late father's Hall of Fame induction. And honestly, I'm pretty sure ironing that is the most wholesome thing that table has ever been used for at the Motel 6 in Newark. Hey everybody, it's Chris. This is the Lilly Pod. Sorry for the hiatus, or maybe you didn't give a shit, but I'm back and spent the summer painting like Michelangelo and getting my dad's Hall of Fame induction and nomination for the Fly Fishing Hall of Fame. I hadn't been back to the East Coast since 2009. Of course, I live in Southwest Montana. And back when I got laid off, it was just dragging myself out of a bad relationship. So this trip back east felt like reopening an old chapter just to see what was still in there. And my dad's Hall of Fame ceremony ended up being pretty underwhelming, to be honest. But everything else hit in the right way. Food, the diversity, the noise, the energy of cities that don't care who you used to be. It kind of all showed me I'm actually healed up from that old life. Like I could walk through it without carrying the baggage. And I wrapped up the whole thing in Virginia with a friend who just feels like home. The kind of guy who reminds you that success comes from grinding and showing up and working hard. Honestly, a pretty solid final note before heading back to Montana. Just a little bit of backstory. After my mom passed in 2022, I was running an Airbnb in the mother-in-law house behind my main house there and just trying to figure out how to supplement my income without taking on something that required a ton of management or mental bandwidth. I landed on a gig delivering lost and late luggage from the Bozeman airport. It sounded simple enough, right? Like drive, drop, repeat, maybe sometimes get a pittance of a tip. What I didn't realize was that, thanks in part to that loathsome show Yellowstone, I'd be running the Gallatin Canyon at least once a day, white-knuckling through the snow and tourists and Teslas. Still, that job, it gave me plenty of windshield time to think. By the way, it was a real mixed bag of people delivering up there. Some genuinely cool mountain types, some interesting folks from other countries, but that Big Sky crowd, just the most entitled, absorbed, presumptuous group I've ever encountered. Hey, but you know what? To be fair, I've always said that's only like 98% of them. Anyway, after I left the boss on red one day for picking up more hours and just got done with that and just focused on my Airbnb and renovating the place that my parents left to me. And I got a call from my dad, Bud Lilly's co-author for many of his books, Paul Shailene, last May. He lives in Vermont, and he's an author himself, an author of many books, a lot about the Yellowstone ecosystem and trout. And he wanted me to put together a letter to nominate my dad for the Fly Fishing Hall of Fame, which was severely overdue. That was covered in the press over the summer. After months of schlepping, really a year of schlepping other people's luggage, this became my raison d'etre and finishing the scraping and painting on the east side of the hotel and working in an advisory role for administration at a local university. Anyway, writing that letter turned out to be one of the best things I've ever done. It gave me a sense of purpose. I went from taking crap from carpetbagging millionaires to calling up former Montana governors and CEOs of conservation groups, and a few folks I remembered from my dad's orbit, people whose signatures actually meant something. And, the crazy part is that one after another, everybody said yes. What started as this little side mission became something much bigger, a reminder that I could still move the needle when it mattered, that I wasn't just carrying, some former teacher and sometime writer carrying luggage up this dangerous canyon, but someone carrying forward a legacy that deserved to be recognized. So in June, I found out my dad got in unanimously, and I had some great press for an event to mark that occasion and for what would have been his 100th birthday in August, which even got, like I said, picked up by the press and actually ran in the Associated Press. So I was really proud of that. On the day I was due to fly out in October for the event, I was in a mad rush to finish painting the east side of what I call the hotel. It's a 9-bedroom, 1907 saltbox style old boarding house that I've been left. My neighbor, who's a saint, had loaned me his scaffolding for like a year. I did the west side. Last year I did the east side. And believe me, I'm in no way handy. Like I was an English teacher and a smart ass. I got a degree in Spanish. I taught forever. Like I don't know this stuff. But I knew I needed to finish and give this scaffolding back, have that off of my head. On top of that, I was redoing the storm windows, which turned into a full-blown saga. And with about 3 hours before I had to leave, I wasn't packed, the paint was barely dry, and the damn storm windows wouldn't fit back into their slots. Maybe it was expansion, I don't know, too many layers of paint, but there I was back to sanding with the paint eater, clock ticking, carefully hauling these wine glass fragile windows up 3 levels of scaffolding on my own. And of course, being clumsy, impatient, and someone who tends to shortcut anything requiring any level of precision, it was a painful, sweaty, like ballet. But I got them in, I got packed, and I somehow made it to the airport. And of course, I found out I packed penny-wise and pound-foolish. I ran out of clothes about halfway through the trip. I brought my old backpacking bag from 2005, the same one that went with me through Latin America and Asia. She's a veteran, that bag. But by day 4, light on clean clothes, I was dressed like a mix between a dorky 8th grader, like a giant 8th grader, and an orphan from a Dickens novel. So there I am, washing my drawers in the hotel shower and blow drying them like a lunatic, because I'll be damned if I'm going to walk around in musty, half-damp undies. So I fly out to New York. Flights out to LaGuardia were easy. I'm kind of a bigger dude, but Bozeman to Chicago, I'm sitting next to a guy that should have bought 2 seats. Like, this dude gave me spina bifida or scoliosis or something, just having to adjust with his bacon spilling over into my seat. It was nice to watch Ted Lasso on Apple Plus on the plane ride. I've been meaning to watch that one because I don't have like 164,000 different streaming accounts, and I get the hype. It was funny. It was heartfelt. It's not really like paint by numbers like I expected, but side characters and Jason Sudeikis, he's really lovable. We taxi LaGuardia like endlessly. So I made a NYC to-do list on my phone because I'd be in the city for a few days before heading upstate. A bit upstate, not like deep upstate, but like a couple hours north of the city, for my dad's Fly Fishing Hall of Fame induction. I wrote the items in no particular order, as my brain just spits out what's available and not what's most important, which I'm sure you're noticing. So I went with, I wanted to see the Vessel at Hudson Yards, the new completed Brooklyn Tower, which looks like Sauron's fortress from Lord of the Rings. Well, technically called Barad-dûr for folks, the dorks in the know. I wanted to see the High Line Elevated Park in Manhattan, pay my respects at Ground Zero, and see that Oculus transfer station, and stroll around Central Park and chill in the lawn there and take in Billionaires Row. If I had time, maybe see the diner from Seinfeld and ride that tram that goes through Roosevelt Island. For food, obviously I wanted to eat pizza, get a bagel or something from a Jewish deli, some halal street meat with the white sauce, some sushi, and a knish, weirdly. Definitely a knish, which I found hard to find on the menus of those ostentatious food carts. So I get settled into my Airbnb in Queens, which was like a 30-minute walk from LaGuardia. Cool little community, apart from it being kind of like a desert for public transportation. Basically row homes and apartment buildings. The thing about Queens, it's like one of the most diverse places on earth. Walking around the first night, I felt like I was in Venezuela and then Nepal, with a little bit of everything in between. Tried to get into this loud club because it was the only place I could see from the outside that had TVs. But the bouncers, these like young Latin guys, not like the dudes like, Latin, like American, like Latinos. Like these dudes were fully like the guys ICE are pursuing, like targeting and victimizing. I just want to watch it at this point. It was, I think, Phillies Dodgers game 6, and nobody had it on. The Yankees had just been eliminated by the Blue Jays. I don't know. I just wanted to go in and ask if these guys, could put the game on for me, and like bachata or some, kind of Caribbean whatever music is just blasting in the streets, and I'm just like, hey, you got baseball? But these guys iced me out with broken English, so I hit them with the Uno Reverso card and brought that Espanol and said I was just trying to catch the game, and they like not so subtly told me it wasn't the place for people like me. Nearby there was this black guy, this New York black guy in a flat-brimmed Yankee cap. He looked like Ari Spears from Mad TV. He just bluntly told me, you know what, like, people that look like me don't really go into those bars, but he respected that I tried, I guess. And there was this other joint he told me to go to down the street. And I found the game, and I had like 2 drinks, just singles, like rum and cokes. And I'm floored. It's like $35. $35 for 2 shots, basically. And a Diet Coke. Phillies won, though, and I walked my ass home with some damn good tacos in hand from a little street cart there. I did stop at a bodega on the way back to the Airbnb for a nightcap, and it was nice to hear some foul-mouthed Caribbean Spanish again. Coño, pinga, and that ubiquitous term of endearment, papi. Usually all three included together in most sentences when a bodega boy is bullshitting with an unk type from the block. Let's see. The next day, which was like my first full day in New York City, I actually spent the morning writing my dad's Hall of Fame induction speech because, of course, I put it off. I was pretty happy with it after an hour or two, and I bought tickets and planned the rest of my trip around getting to Philly. If the Phillies could get a game in the next round where they'd play the Brewers or the Cubs or something, but we all know how that went down. Does baseball need a salary cap? The 3 championships in 5 years will make a dynasty. So I guess after finishing writing that, my biggest deliberation on the trip was, do I go jeans, hoodie, or t-shirt and shorts as the weather was low 60s and sunny, not really humid at all. Little breeze. I'd be walking around all day. I did go with being a little cold over swamp ass and sweaty back, and being a Montana guy, I thought I'd be good. I was good walking around low-rise, like sunny Queens, but I couldn't have been more wrong once I got into downtown Brooklyn with the wind and the shade from the buildings making it feel at least 20 degrees cooler. Passing through Little Pakistan, Little India or whatever, on the way to Jackson Heights, Roosevelt Ave Station, a subway stop. It was a real portal into the subcontinent. You'd be forgiven if you thought you were in Mumbai or Karachi. Great smells, lots of jewelry, garment shops, lots of men in dyed orange beards, which I Googled later. It's a testament to Muhammad. It's not like old grandma's doing the purple hair on accident. Anyway, this was the kind of cold that gets your bones it right through you. It's like when you've been skiing all day or doing work outside in the winter kind of cold. You just can't get warm again. It's core cold. You need like a scalding shower. So I get on the 7 train. It's Manhattan bound, which is the one above ground. They had great views of Manhattan. I transfer onto a Brooklyn-bound train. I did experience a lot of culture shock. I'd been living in Three Forks, Montana for too long, even though I lived out there once upon a time. But it's just I forgot what diversity looks like and people of all shapes and colors. And I was dressed, like I said, like a dork. Just realized, like, I need a makeover. But are they going to know I'm like this corny white guy from a town of 2,000 people in one of the most deserted places in North America? And I was just like, they know. But I got into Brooklyn, my old stomping ground, and I forgot what New York City can be like. Like, even downtown Brooklyn, walking around Flatbush Avenue, Atlantic Pacific Ave, where the Barclays Center is, my old haunts, it was really rattling and busy and loud. From there, I did a lot of walking this day, and I walked over by the Brooklyn Bridge, but there's some warehouses that frame the Manhattan Bridge. It's like really an iconic shot for like commercials or like Sex in the City. Those red brick warehouses framing this shot of the Manhattan Bridge. There's just droves of people there taking photographs or shooting their horseshit content. It's the same crowd you get that pretends to hold up the Leaning Tower of Pisa or doing that forced perspective pinch of the Eiffel Tower. Just really predictable. I mean, I took pictures too, but I wasn't like setting up there with one of those halo light things and, like a tripod that probably cost that several $100s. I got out of there quickly and walked across the Brooklyn Bridge, which was awesome and finally sunny. I meant to do it when I lived in New York and never did, but I did it and it was sunny. And so despite the wind whipping across the East River, it was really amazing to see this thing up close, this 19th century innovation to getting it built. It's really worth a YouTube rabbit hole. So I'm glad I did that. And I sauntered down from the Brooklyn Bridge into lower Manhattan. It was damn cold there. I'm headed toward Ground Zero. There was back then, I remember there was a subway that popped up above ground at Lower Manhattan near Ground Zero around 2009 where you could watch the construction back then. And I hadn't seen, the city get rebuilt. And I never saw the towers, right? And I was there, like, obviously post 9/11. I gotta say, the Hasidic Jews were out in force, asking every white person at most intersections if they were Jewish and carrying around these like palms or plants or something. I take a little pride in not being 100% just boring white guy ethnically. So I was like, yeah, I'm not Jewish today, but thanks for asking. But then I saw him ask what looked like a Midwestern guy with a Nebraska football visor cap and a Disneyland sweater, just screaming Goyim. And I was like, oh, okay. They're just asking all the dudes if they're Jewish. I did Google it later, and it's something about speeding the appearance of the Messiah and increasing like the observance if they can do certain ceremonies with lapsed Jews. Evidently, it's the Lubavitch Jews that run this campaign around their holidays. The women were asking the women, and the men asked the men. It was really, really just interesting how many Hasidic Jews are in New York City and literally like nowhere else. I did have Hasidic neighbors in Philly in 2008, but it's nothing like New York, Philly in 2006, 7 when I lived in Philly. It's just crazy. I never came across that my whole life outside of the East Coast. Like even black people were not really exotic in Montana to me growing up because we had, like a couple of them in school, but also just Division I sports team, college sports team in town where my family went to all the games. So, but like I knew like just one Jewish kid my entire life in Montana, and also some business associates of my parents from Boston with the last name Shapiro, who always spoiled me weirdly with Batman gifts when they came for dinner a few times, even though like I never knew them closely and I was super young and never indicated that I liked Batman, but as it were, I did.
And clear of the closing doors, please.
Anyway, walking into cavernous Lower Manhattan, I was freezing. Navigation was pretty easy because I just walked toward the really tall thing, which is One World Trade Center. Around Fulton and Church Streets, I spot the Oculus, which is this transportation hub near the footprints of the towers that's supposed to represent dove in flight and hope, remembrance kind of thing. But from the outside, it kind of looked like a whale skeleton. But being so cold, I did have to go inside. It was this gigantic atrium, several floors up, awash in natural bright white light with people milling about on the bottom floor. The ceiling was like a soaring canopy of ridged arches high up, like being in a supersized basilica. I haven't been to Europe with its cathedrals. I've seen some amazing sights. When I saw this, I did audibly. I was like, oh my God. And down on the floor, someone's playing piano, and the acoustics are beautiful. I just come from the 9/11 memorial. That's emotional for me. I'm not connected to New York City back then. But just someone seeing all those people die on live TV during my formative years. The vast beauty of the space mixed with the piano, and I got emotional. Of course, when you get down to the floor level there in the Oculus, the reality hits, and it's just a subway transfer station mixed with like a mall. It's beautiful, but basically a mall at that point. Kind of symbolic, I guess, of New York and capitalism at the time. It's at the same time, it's just don't look too close. The moment still was quiet and contemplative. The next day proved to be even more walking, and some logistics needed to be sewn up as I'd be meeting a friend and a colleague from Montana State that night and take off for upstate New York the next day for my dad's Hall of Fame induction. Again, I picked the one part of the 5 boroughs that's not Staten Island where the subway is not conveniently close at all, so I wouldn't be able to do any coming back to the Airbnb after a morning of activities, get my bag or whatever. I did appreciate that this specific Airbnb had a reasonable check-in, check-out time, like 11 a.m., 2 p.m. As a host myself, I can't tell you how much I loathe other hosts playing like they need 162 hours to turn around a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, and have like 5 p.m. check-ins and 10 a.m. check-outs. It's mad. So my gigantic bag is on my back, which, with all this walking, led to some nice development in old Chrissy Cankle's calf muscles there. I decided to roll the dice on one of those bag storage places. These are not available in the subways or Port Authority, likely because of the risk of terrorism. So as a result, the market corrects, and a lot of these spots around the city are like bodegas. Or the place I went to was in the back of this bicycle rental spot near Madison Square Garden, where these gregarious, tall, 20-something twins seem to be shouting at each other. I think it was in Turkish, but to be honest, it just feels that way, listening to groups of men speaking another language in a place of business. Why are they shouting? But these guys did let me chill and charge my phone there a bit. as I took in what seemed like a Turkish soap opera, but was likely guys talking about soccer or like those ice cream pranks or mustaches or whatever Turkish men discuss. I mean, who knows if they rifle through your bag when you leave it there, because the reviews could always be cooked up. But at some point, you just got to let go. So I dropped the bag off there. I pick up later before I went to New Jersey, and I started ticking off some to-dos. Halal lamb meat with the white sauce and a gyro. And yes, I ate that on the red steps at Times Square like a lame tourist. No napkin, so I looked like George Costanza in Seinfeld, caught on camera eating an ice cream sundae, just really inhaling that thing. Yes, I was concerned if the white sauce and street meat was going to turn on me. Where would I find a bathroom in Manhattan? But I just mentally said, no, it's not going to happen. And you know what? Honestly, that seemed to do the trick. Just put it out of your mind. I wanted to see the new Hudson Yards skyscraper development or cluster and the surrounding development there. My initial plan was a walk, the Highline Park, but I ended up covering a lot of ground first, walking over to West Side. I saw that Intrepid battleship, which is docked, kind of as a nod to my Navy dad, veteran dad, the aforementioned Bud Lilly. He'd want me to see it. And I just walked all across the west side of Manhattan there and stopped underneath the vessel. So tick that off my list. It's a honeycomb structure where I found there were beach chairs set up in the plaza there that was showing a World Cup. I think it was a qualifier, featuring Mbappé from Team France, and he's cakewalking all over, I think it was like Armenia or Azerbaijan. I don't know. One of those places where the women probably have really hairy arms. I almost dozed in. I was like about to doze off, but there was a Comic-Con happening nearby, and there was just amazing work some of these dorks put into these costumes. It made for pretty great people watching. Once I got rusted up from watching the first half of that match, and I decided I wasn't going to get much chance to see New York from up high at the viewing platforms like the Empire State Building or Top of the Rock or the new one that juts out from those Hudson Yards skyscrapers. So the vessel is my move. It's, like I said, it's honeycomb structure. It's sort of MC Escher looking spiraling thing, maybe 16, 17, 18 stories tall. And I said, whatever. And I got the ticket, and of course I got fleeced for it. I got up a few flights, and it occurred to me with the low railing, they're like netting. It's clearly an attraction for suicides, right? There were like closed off areas too, really high up. It's also a huge fucking ripoff, and you can't get high enough to make much of an aerial view of anything. So I spent nearly $20 to walk some stairs. Architecturally, yeah, it's cool. It gave me the willies, though, like knowing that it's likely that much to partake in and walk the steps because they got to hire security guards and put up the netting to prevent accidental and purposeful jumpers. After that, I was just strolling around looking at the big guys, Empire State Building, the new massive J.P. Morgan skyscraper with its Asian-style LED lights really dominates the new Midtown skyline. I love the Chrysler Building. It's easily the most beautiful. I think, while the Empire State is the most epic, I think the Chrysler Building is the most beautiful in Midtown, or maybe even all of Manhattan. As far as Art Deco, probably the most beautiful on Earth. I did a quick trip to the New York Public Library with the lions on the steps. By the way, this is where I would have mercifully found a men's room had that halal meat turned on me. Also, Bryant Park has an out for you if you're truly destitute. In Manhattan, people watching is undefeated. And although I didn't see anything too goofy like when you're on the Brooklyn-bound L train at 3 a.m. with a naked guy hauling a cello, I did realize that, hey, I must be a little bit of a hit with middle-aged black women. The eye contact throughout the day was just, that was there. It's hard to avoid. Some of them were pretty bold, but keep it pushing. So Jim Thule, a professor at MSU Library, who was flying out to support me, and as a gesture for my dad's legacy and what Jim does for MSU, he flew out. I agreed to meet him in Hoboken in New Jersey across the Hudson, looking at Manhattan. Instead of in Newark, of course, because it's Newark, he had a rental car, and honestly, I remember Hoboken being pretty cool, or as the kids say, quite lit. We did go out for a bit, had amazing Indian, bullshitted, went back to the Motel 6, a Newark Motel 6, only a few roaches, And this place was clearly some kind of front for the real operation, which was a questionably legal parking lot setup. So, the next morning, we get them to pull the 3 or 4 cars that were blocking us in out. I pull out my wrinkled suit beforehand, and this is the one that had been stuffed into my backpacker bag for days. And I ironed it on the Motel 6 table with a towel between the iron and whatever questionable laminate that was. This was the suit I'd be wearing to accept my late father's Hall of Fame induction. And honestly, I'm pretty sure ironing that is the most wholesome thing that table has ever been used for at the Motel 6 in Newark. The next morning, it's a Saturday, and Jim is driving us up a few hours upstate for a meet and then toward the evening's Hall of Fame induction. The former around Woodstock and the latter west of there a bit in a place called Livingston Manor, New York State. Early fall colors in the Hudson Valley north of New York, in New York City, into the Catskills. Rolling hills dotted wonderfully with yellows and greens, a few reds. Definitely a different kind of beauty, unlike and differently beautiful than the majesty of Montana or other parts of the Mountain West, but more vibrant in color. So, due to my general carelessness and ADHD, I left my brown belt and shoes in Montana because I had convinced myself that I needed a black belt and shoes. Not remembering blue and black colors do clash. My suit was blue. So I needed to cop those. And, of course, the deli belly I was dealing with, we had Indian the night before. So, of course, it wasn't the halal meat. It's the deli belly. And it's like, we gotta make a stop here, Jim. We got into Kingston, which is a city north of Poughkeepsie in the Hudson Valley. We found a Men's Warehouse, and I took care of both issues and kept the receipt for the brown belt because I knew I'd be returning a nearly $100 belt bought in haste due to said deli belly after the ceremony, as I'm really not someone who needs multiple brown belts, and certainly not in that range with the lifestyle I currently lead. But the Gohans I got in that fancy sneaker style are something I'm using so I can finally stop dressing like the giant 8th grader there and upgrade my wardrobe with non-Ross dress for less swag. Maybe get a little more gentlemanly. I don't know. All right, so we meet with Nick Lyons in Woodstock, and he's a humble, inspiring writer of 93 years old who's written everything, who's also the head of Lyons Press, which is a major publishing house. I played friendly banter guy asking regular man questions, but also about his writing process. This guy still writes for a few hours every day, even at age 93. And Jim talked deeper shop, and they swapped names and stories of angling and literature industry bigwigs. And we got him to agree to be our 2026 MSU Library Trout Lecture Series guest, which may be, and these are in Nick's words, it's his last chance for him to get out to Montana, which is a place that is a subject of many of his books and essays and articles. This guy's demeanor was just really calm. He had such a tender spirit. His attitude was warm. I felt like a real connection to him, and also the fact that we shared what seemed to be the same eye color and slightly swarthy olive skin tone combined with a little extra weight. And I just affixed myself to thinking, is this what I'm going to look like if I'm fortunate enough to live to this guy's age and write daily and entertain visitors? So he was a mensch. Leaving our meeting with Nick and his wonderful, and also a writer, his partner Ruth, gave both Jim and me great energy and morale as we drove to the Hall of Fame event. The whole vibe was we just landed a major author for this MSU event. And we're also going to bring in the fold the networking and that connection of this major author. This energy pretty much slipped out of the balloon as we rolled up to the induction event and the night for the Hall of Fame began. I wouldn't say the organizers didn't give a shit about me, but it was certainly on us to adapt to them. Like the busboy at Hooters gets more attention than we were given. I'd been in email correspondence with them for months, and I'm the representative and family member for the principal recipient, my dad, and immodestly, he's the biggest inductee of the year. I'm not saying the organizers and board and president needed to kiss my ring, but I just think, we probably put on a much better event. Just thinking back, the whole night just was a little off. Yeah, the Hall of Fame is in a cutesy kind of mountainside in the Catskills. but it seemed like a glorified summer camp main counselor building rather than a hollowed institution. We were in a chilly wedding tent with no assigned seating or recognition of me or anybody else as representatives, or, like I was a representative Bud Lilly pro temper, however you say that, or anybody else that were reps of inductees. There were like coolers, okay, with beers, but that just seemed like a neighborhood 4th of July barbecue. The administration was just so impassioned about the event, they couldn't even be bothered to track down a mic that didn't sound like karaoke night at a soup kitchen. Administration there seemed to be like, oh, okay, when Jim and I introduced ourselves, me as, Bud's son, and Jim as his great friend and representative from Montana State University Library, receiving Bud Lilly's induction. And if you're in the know in the fly fishing world, you understand MSU Library's importance. It's like loving basketball and not knowing about Rucker Park. But they basically just went back to their conversations. I mean, would it kill you to get like a dais in the tent for the inductees, or maybe have a pre-event where the inductees and the relatives like meet and greet, or even, a tour of the place, or provide some name tags or introductions so I don't feel like I'm speed dating these East Coast types? The provinciality of the people there was on full display. Like, the name Bud Lilly is synonymous with Western angling. And low-key, these people kind of acted like they didn't give a shit or didn't know who he was, making it feel like we were barging in on their clubhouse fishing club and not here celebrating my dad, is the biggest name in contemporary fly fishing. Not being immodest, it just rubbed me as unceremonious, or maybe a misunderstanding of the importance of his footprint or Western angling, which is crazy because nobody thinks Catskills over Yellowstone or Montana if you're planning a fly fishing trip. That's like saying the local Muni Par 3 in Tulsa is better golfing than St. Andrews in Scotland. All right, calm down. Jim, who's an eminent professor with multiple degrees, and the reason why our trout and salmonid collection has more than doubled to 15,000 volumes, both of us, we tried circulating the room. But since we weren't in PR or working for Reuters or in banking or something, a lot of folks there were just doing that whole look around thing when they're talking to you, like trying to see who else they can get to talk to, who else is there. And then there's the MC. This guy, sweet enough guy, but he's wearing a Hawaiian shirt and he's mispronouncing most of the names of the inductees. This shtick would have been perfect for a radio event in a supermarket or like a middle school talent show. And listen, I'm no seeker of bougie events. As someone, I wear sweatpants like 6 months out of the year, okay? But having like an unprepared, although likable, carnival barker type as MC for the Fly Fishing Hall of Fame, it just didn't seem befitting the occasion. Poor form. But I gave my speech. He did pronounce my name right. Folks warmed up to me, and then they were cool with me. But I'd pretty much had it. We ended up leaving early, and we hung out with Paul Shailene, who is, like I said, Western literature royalty, and he's also on their board. And the MC pronounced his name wrong also, but we hung out, and his wife Marcia is there. She used to be the Yellowstone Park superintendent. And then we drove back to Newark. This, like I said, he co-wrote my dad's books. He was the impetus to begin the whole process and write the letters and get the co-signers and get my dad into the Hall of Fame. But, Paul was the one that kicked me in the ass to start the process. I remember him writing the books when he was my age, and I was just a youngling in the kitchen there with my dad. And so I really respect the man, and it was really great to reconnect with him. I spent months on this biography for my dad, which Paul said was, he said it was the best Hall of Fame letter he's ever read. And it, of course, didn't have an economy of words, which if you know me or listening now, you realize, yeah, that tracks. The biography for the Knight's playbill or whatever you call it, the pamphlet, I put my dad's biography at 1,000 words. One guy had one paragraph. I don't know. All this was just preparation. I'm traveling across the country for this, and I don't know. I mean, it was kind of like a party I wasn't invited to. I guess I should have known this was going to be the cul-de-sac lemonade stand of formal events right from the start. They didn't even get the small stuff right. Do you know how I knew this was going to be an unceremonious clown show? The acceptance letter from last June. I spent months on my dad's letter and networking the cosigners, and they sent me a boilerplate form, and they didn't take like the 60 seconds required to type out my dad's name in a proper font. They had copied and pasted the names of the new acceptees into the form letter in a different, in all caps font. The names of the honorees. It looked like a hostage note. The biggest figures and angling for the year mismatched all caps. Nice. Alas, I'm going to read the speech here. I did riff a bit on being like the Bronny James of fly fishing to begin the speech, which seemed to be a good place to start. The idea being that Bronny James is probably above average at basketball in a cross-section of society, but not really a suiting heir to being LeBron James' son based on his lack of talent relative to the GOAT conversation that, LeBron James is LeBron James, right? So, I'm the Bronny James of fly fishing. I can fly fish, but I'm in no way the heir to the Bud Lilly throne with the talent alone. But, fly fishing, my dad gave it to me as a portal to loving the outdoors and, some moderate environmental activism. Although I will say now that after seeing that ghastly floating city full of just mediocre people, which is called the Icon of the Seas, that cruise ship, now knowing that exists, no a lifetime of recycling or repurposing things that I do throughout my whole life would blot out what this unholy thing shits into the ocean and the atmosphere every single second. Well, by the way, another funny thing, how at fly fishing events in Montana, it's really white bread, flannel, Patagonia vests. Bozeman does have that Bose Angeles reputation, but it's not the vibe at our MSU events and some of the other ones surrounding fly fishing for the old heads out in the West. Just chill people dressed and talking like they're at the Western Cafe eating a cinnamon bun, but they might be worth several $1 million, but they're just not acting like it. At this event, a fair amount of the crowd were dudes in suits and turtlenecks with a shock of that gray hair and their Kikkoman-colored hair, and they sounded like extras in The Sopranos, and it was just really uncanny to talk fly fishing with a guy saying, "Hey, so it's casting. Can you just believe the thing wouldn't bite on that elk hair caddis?" So I says, "Let's see if this takes a blue-winged olive on point with a prince sniff as a dropper. Can you believe this didn't bite?" "No, sir." "I don't know why. Did you spook him?" I do want to shout out one of the inductees. He was an artist named Adrian Minocchio, also a victim of the MC's mispronunciation. He was a nice departure from the other conversations and an easy laugh, kind of an audience booster. He had this stentorian laugh that really brought the audience along. Anyway, I'm going to read the Hall of Fame speech here. Then I'll talk a little bit about Philly and drop into the end of my trip in Virginia there, visiting a friend. All right, I got up there, riffed a little bit about the Bronny James, got them on my side, and then I got into the speech. I'm Chris Lilly, the youngest son of Bud Lilly. I'm here representing my family, but also Montana State University Library. Bud's legacy continues through the Montana State University Library Bud Lilly, Trout, and Salmonid Initiative, which houses the world's most expansive collection of research and literature materials on trout, salmonids, and the study of cold water fisheries, preserving not just trout, but the history, science, and culture of angling for generations to come. People see Bud Lilly as the preeminent Western angler, a trout's best friend. But to me, he was just Dad. Beyond the rivers, it was stories about the Navy, growing up during the Depression, early morning rides to basketball practice, inside jokes between him and my mom that became their own language. And yeah, those trips to the blue ribbon streams of the greater Yellowstone ecosystem, where I'd be awed by his effortless casting and he'd try not to be impatient with my very clear lack of it. I grew up with history. By the time I came along, Dad was 59 and already well-stocked with accolades. It was like walking into a movie halfway through the third act. His older kids grown, his reputation well-established. But that meant I got to know Bud the man, not Bud the legend. Most of our relationship wasn't really about fly fishing at all. It makes it a little ironic, maybe fitting, that I'm the one standing here accepting this honor. Over time, our relationship evolved from the stern senior father, sometimes at his wit's end, raising two young kids in his retirement years, to two men swapping stories on the front patio, watching the July sun set over the tobacco roots. I'd tell him about my travels and misadventures. He'd retell an old joke or triumph or maybe even a quiet regret, always offering insight without telling me exactly what to do. Not quite his approach when I was 10 and he was trying to fix my cast, but what can you do? This past April, Paul Shailene called and said, "We've got to get Bud in. He's overdue." And he was right. Bud's induction is overdue. Then again, so is Isaac Walton. He's in the same class, and he's been waiting since 1653. The only thing that takes longer than that would be a rancher, an angler, and Fish, Wildlife, and Parks all agreeing on stream access without a lawsuit. When I sent Paul my first draft of my dad's nomination letter, he said it was well done, maybe even beautiful, but wrong. I'd written a biography. He needed accomplishments and impact. Pare it down, he told me. Then do it again. So I did. And in the process, something shifted. After losing both my parents, leaving the teaching profession, starting a small business, and stepping into a leadership role at the MSU Library Board, life felt like a hard reset. But writing that nomination became a kind of reconnection. One day I was hauling lost airline luggage through a blizzard in the Gallatin Canyon. The next I was speaking with former governors and industry CEOs eager to endorse my dad's candidacy. It felt right, like being back on the river with mom and dad nearby, quietly offering tips, but letting me do it myself. My father was a pioneer in the rise of catch and release fishing, but near the end of his life, he said he wished he had more time to share this. The point of catch and release, really fishing, isn't to get a hero shot of what you landed. It's to give the fish another chance to live and spawn. Be thankful for what they gave you. Bud always believed fishing wasn't about showing off what you caught. It was about what you experienced. The sound of the riffle, the light on the water, the friends beside you, the mountains, the calm. And if he were here today, I think he'd have a few things to say about our obsession with pictures and the phone in general. He'd probably tell us, "Put that goddamn thing down. That trout doesn't care how many likes you get." When I said catch and release, I didn't mean catch, stage a photo shoot, hold the trout up like the goddamn Lion King, and then release it sometime before it goes belly up. He understood, long before hashtags and highlight reels, that this isn't about digital trophies or how much you spent on your gear at Sims. He always told me, the trout can't tell the difference between a $1,200 rod and one you got at the gas station on your way to the river. It's about the total experience, about being present in a place that humbles you, slows you down, and connects you to something bigger than yourself. I may not be the angler my dad was, not even close. But I'm proud to carry forward his vision for conservation, environmental stewardship, and the pure, unfiltered need for wild trout in wild rivers. Thank you. After the ceremony, Jim drove us through the rain back to Newark, and we drank a bit, smoked some heaters on the balcony before hitting the hay. He left early in the morning, and I farted around a bit before Ubering downtown to Newark. My driver was this old-school black guy talking about how Trump and RFK firing a bunch of scientists might not be the best move. I had a little time to burn before my bus ride to Philly, so I got into Manhattan from Newark on the PATH train. I walked around Central Park and took in Billionaire's Row over some coffee on the lawn. Central Park that day was weirdly empty. I mean, I guess it's Sunday in New York. Kind of is always a little slower. Which is probably why I ended up spotting the actress Shailene Woodley. She was sitting under a tree with her own coffee. We smiled at each other, and I was like, maybe she was just relieved. I didn't walk over and make a thing of it, but I'm going to choose to believe a major actress checked me out, because that's clearly what happened. I chilled on the grass a bit, and then the rain kind of started. I was looking up at the biggest buildings outside of China and Dubai, geeking out over them, especially for a person living in a town of 2,000 people. I made the walk over to catch my bus at the Javits Center, which is near Hudson Yards again, sandwiched between Chelsea and Hell's Kitchen on the west side. I did finally get my knish, expecting the perfect crunchy outside, doughy inside magic topped with some deli mustard. And instead of biting into something that tasted, like that, it was more of a microwaved Play-Doh. I needed something, so I choked it down on the way to Philly, a city I was heading toward with some trepidation. on the bus to Philly with slate gray skies, and the Philly skyline is in the distance, piercing through the early fall colors of I-95 corridor there. As we got into the city, I thought I'd be flooded with sadness or anger for lost time, relationships, experiences, friendships, and what was easily one of the toughest years of my life outside of taking care of my dying mom. My first job, summer 2006, after moving there with my girlfriend at the time, I needed something to get by, show her I could pull my weight. Filling coffee up on train platforms for Verizon, side gigging, working circus security, for which I was summarily fired for not being good at the job of circus security. Once an omnipresent and grating sound during my time there is the Philly accent, and I don't know if it's cities changing or where I was, but I only heard it once, that unmistakable Philly accent, and it was an older white lady at a supermarket on Spring Garden Street. We got fresh hoagies back by the deli, and the Eagles game's on later if you're heading home to watch. Hey, grab yourself a bottle of water. That's my best version of it. It's not getting any better. As long as you say hoagie, Eagles, and some water, Passyunk Street, there's a Philly accent for you. Also, what's with that new Comcast skyscraper? Not the USB stick looking one from when I lived there. There's a new one, and it's, I think, the tallest one in Philly now. It really looks like someone's kid freestyled it with Legos. Just no character at all. I think the best new East Coast skyscraper is that Brooklyn Tower, and then the Steinway on Billionaires Row. The JP Morgan huge one in Midtown is massive. Actually, from the New Jersey side, looking at Manhattan, you can tell the Central Park Tower off Columbus Circle beats everything in Manhattan by roof height, even the new World Trade Center. So I looked that up. It is the tallest building in the Western Hemisphere. Getting into Center City, Philly, I expected the deep bitterness or toxic nostalgia of reliving that time. Underpaid and overworked as the white kid from Montana teaching Spanish at the black school in West Philly. Living in fear of an abusive boss and a toxic work environment, coming home to someone equally overwhelmed and treated abusively by her manager, both of us trying to get our own start, never finding parking. She overwhelmed with how this wasn't going to be easy. Honestly, I actually had to dig back archaeologically through some old emails with her to remember what it felt like, what so much of that time felt like. I suppose that means I've either moved on or blacked it out, maybe both. I knew coming back to Philly would stir up complex feelings. But those emails showed two people who had clearly loved each other deeply at one time, got trapped in a hurtful and painful, cyclical dynamic neither of us had the tools to manage. I can see now that while I often felt cornered and reacted from that place, I'd go too far, say awful things, refuse to back down, and rarely reflect afterward. Always reaction, never reflection. I wasn't the only one contributing to the dysfunction, but I can see now more clearly the parts that were mine. And if I'm being honest, some of those blind spots still follow me. In my marriage now, I'm trying to respond instead of react, to slow down enough to actually see what's in front of me. I don't get it right as often as I want to, but at least now I know the terrain, where the cliffs are. I walk to Society Hill, just wanting to soak in whatever feeling might surface, like listening to a song you know will stir something deep, or looking up someone on Facebook you probably shouldn't, driving past your childhood home, it's going to be condos. You just steer right into the nostalgia, the discomfort, the what if of it all. But honestly, it wasn't any of that. Finding the old apartment on Spruce Street was more like revisiting a place of promise that led to great pain and stress, and realizing it had lost all its power. Just me, that night, looking through an emotional time portal of the young man I was then, loosely ambitious, nebulous about what I wanted, other than wanting to see the world outside of Montana, not sure how to do that. Living beyond my means with someone it should have worked with, but life beat that out of us. Moving there was the right decision at the wrong time. I needed to get out and see the world. but I wasn't yet someone who knew how to stand on my own feet without scraping by. Maybe I didn't know myself like I do now. I do remember the loneliness mixed with pride, the pride of giving this city and that girl a shot. Few friends, but proud of the job I had and my gumption in trying this out. Driving to work down Ben Franklin Parkway onto Kelly Drive to the main line, then to West Philly, listening to Sam's Town, an album by the Killers, especially the song When We Were Young. There's this lyric in that song. And sometimes you close your eyes and see the place where you used to live when you were young. That hit harder than I could have known then. Prescient. Filling the gas tank, $5 at a time, because I was afraid of what might come next. The relationship was mired in fights, not just about bills, age gap, experience gaps, expectations. I'd seen some of the world, lived with a host family in Oaxaca, Mexico, talked my way out of federales pointing guns at me, finessed my way into visiting forbidden temples in Chiapas, even bribed a custom official after getting back from Cuba. But none of that translated to maturity. I was still naive, and she was under pressure, trying to keep both of us afloat, teaching me up. We had similar extroverted personalities, the same astrological sign, if that's even a thing, but we met in a moment of travel and in freedom, not the real world. Mr. Montana and Miss Jersey Shore. A love story bound for failure, or an opposites attract fairy tale that burned too fast. It was the kind of love you give before you learn to be careful. For years, I told myself she was abusive, and maybe she was at times. But I can see now how we both contributed to the chaos. The world was hard. Billy in 2006 was harder, which made it turbulent to walk together. It was two young people reacting, sharpening the edges on each other instead of understanding, caught in currents we didn't recognize and had no idea how to swim out of. The thaw came years later, after we'd gotten back together and tried New York, which was arguably worse. Not the city, but the fights. Both endured other heartbreaks and talked on the phone a few years later when I was living teaching in South Korea. Not to rekindle anything, just to say hi. The respect was there and probably always will be. We checked in on each other for years around our birthdays. And when that faded, I think that was its own quiet sign of healing. We could finally let go without clinging to the edge of the pool. I still love her parents, and I always will. They treated me like a son, and part of me hopes they still see me that way. I thought about reaching out for coffee while on the East Coast, or stopping by to see her parents, but some things I think are best left where they are. She's married with kids now, and I'm genuinely happy for her. Wouldn't want to make things weird for her husband, who seems like a good guy. She and I could have never been right for each other based on where we both are today. Her parents reached out to me when mine passed. I wrote to thank them, to express the gratitude I'd only come to understand with time and distance. That felt like the true closing scene. No sequel needed. Nothing ruined with a Toy Story 4 or, depending on your outlook, Godfather 3. Some stories deserve no coda after the credits roll. I wanted to share something to bring a little levity. So it was the summer of 2006. I'd just moved to Philly, and every weekend we'd drive an hour east, if traffic was perfect, which it never was, to the Jersey Shore. You know, to see her parents, eat real food, maybe hit the beach, pretend we weren't broke. Now, one particular morning, I'm just walking around their house in boxers and a t-shirt, feeling comfortable, feeling accepted, maybe feeling a little too at home. And suddenly, out of nowhere, her dad, this gruff, old-school Italian guy, stops me and goes, "What the hell are you doing?" And I'm like, "Walking?" And he goes, "You can't walk around here like that." And I'm kind of channeling my inner Larry David, and I just look at him and go, "What, you're telling me I don't have boxer privileges?" He blinks. "Boxer privileges? What the hell are you talking about? Of course not." And I'm standing there thinking, no, that's bullshit. I help in the yard, sometimes. I go to the movies with you and your brother as you guys yak like the two old Muppets heckling in the balcony. I deserve boxer privileges. So, naturally, being 22 and full of righteous indignation and zero self-awareness, I stage a protest. I go upstairs and put on a full suit, like funeral-level formal wear. Jacket, tie, the whole thing. And I spend the rest of the afternoon outside, in June, in Toms River, New Jersey, playing with her nieces, jumping on a trampoline, kicking the ball around, in a wool suit. The kind of perspiration soak you get from running a multi-day, recon mission in the Nam. I don't think I ever earned those boxer privileges, but my point, that I demand to be taken seriously, it was made. Poorly. Now, looking back, I understand where her dad was coming from. I mean, at the time, I thought it was about respect, but really, it was about my ridiculous sense of presumptuous entitlement. Maybe that's been beaten out of me over the years by consequences or just good old-fashioned embarrassment. But man, one brief, humid day in the summer of 2006, I stood proudly for my right to wear boxers in someone else's home. And I lost. Anyway, I was ready for Philly like a kid flinching before a punch. And it turned out to be just an amazing few days where almost everyone was not only incredibly friendly, but just a subversion of my experience there at the end of W's second term. Maybe it's just that visiting a place is almost better than living there. Like Cairo, New Orleans, maybe Vegas come to mind like that. I used to love my summers in Three Forks, Montana, but living here year-round means everyone knows your business. The worldview can get pretty narrow, and it's cold most of the year. I've weirdly grown a little bit more conservative or maybe moderate, but as the saying goes, you don't hang around the barbershop all day without eventually getting a cut. That first night in Philly, I grabbed and I drank a few Yinglings in a Chinatown alley. My favorite beer. It's impossible to find it in Montana. I kind of like the gritty, slightly trashy feel of doing that there. I walked through Society Hill and soaked in that powerless nostalgia. And I wound up at Jim's on South Street for a cheesesteak. And from there, I hoofed it all the way back to my Airbnb in a part of the city called Poplar, north of Center City. And this is not Northern Liberties like the listing bragged. Same scam my first Brooklyn apartment pulled, calling Bushwick East Williamsburg. Anyway, it was a 45-minute walk in a misty rain, so the cold hoagie kind of sucked, but at least gave me an excuse to eat more cheesesteaks in the days that followed. The next morning, turns out the Navy and Marines 250th anniversary parade was going on, so I walked down to Market Street. It wasn't an amazing parade, but the setting, you got City Hall behind it, the drums echoing between the buildings, it was perfect. I felt proud for my dad's Navy service. I even got a little nostalgic for my dorky high school marching band days in Bozeman. Some guy known for the saxophone absolutely shredded a sax solo. He even had his own float, full-on SNL intro vibes. I think mostly because the parade had stalled and he was killing time, but it was still sweet. Afterwards, I wandered towards City Hall, grabbed myself a hoagie, a turkey hoagie, at a WaWa. WaWa still fucks. So many lunches I had back in Jersey or Philly years ago. That combo of soft roll, a little too much mayo, and good coffee poured by hardworking folks who'll ask you if you want your sandwich toasted and tell you the kid's got a book report due for the library. The kind of people who tell you to have a blessed day and actually mean it, though. So I wandered a bit more. I found one of those portals at City Hall. It's you could see people in another part of the world. That seems like an idea that could go very wrong. They can see us here in Philly. But that day, we were matched up with somewhere in Poland, and everybody was weirdly wholesome about it. I mean, this is the city that booed Santa Claus, right? There were just a lot of those heart hand things. I don't know. I was impressed. The gesture from Philly that made it back across the Atlantic and, not throwing snowballs full of batteries at it. I mean, if it were winter. From there, I walked the Ben Franklin Parkway to the Philly Art Museum. I did run the Rocky Steps. There are 2 Rocky statues now. 2 statues for a fictional guy, and still not one for Joe Frazier, as Bill Burr said. He's shitting on Philly at that Philly rant that really propelled him. Dude, you got Joe Frazier, an actual champion from here. But no, dude, you build not one, but 2 statues for a make-believe Italian. 3-foot fucking Italian. You stupid Philly cheese-eating jackasses. That's my Bill Burr. Sorry. I don't listen to him anymore. I think he really ruined his career, in my opinion, when he took that blood money in Saudi Arabia after building a career on calling out bullshit. This, as far as the 2 Rocky statues, he was not wrong. Like, finally, when you get coffee, when you're not a kid anymore, or aging into someone who actually cares about their yard, I think I finally get museums. Not like when I was in Chicago in high school and we just zipped past that old couple at the Chicago Art Institute, the couple with the pitchfork. And I'm like, oh yeah, there it is. But I like really soaked in the art this time. I spent half my time with the Impressionists, the Post-Impressionists, the other half staring at these massive rugs at the main staircase, taking in Constantinople, like, era, trying to understand the difference between the 2 schools of weaving, which I forget now, but at the time it was, like, fascinating. I don't know. I didn't know why I was so transfixed, but probably just the right exhibit for where my head was that day. Thought about going back the next day, because when you buy a ticket, it's like 2 consecutive days you can use the ticket for. I don't know. I mean, sometimes I just get that itch to learn something random. Like, out of nowhere, I'll get obsessed with how a French press works. Or, like, who makes a drill bit? Like, is there a LeBron James of drill bit making? Some old guy in Tool World that's like, no, man, no, that's the Michael Jordan of drill bits. No. He crushes the new drill bit LeBron guy. That's, like, where my head was, like, just so deeply into learning about Constantinople on these rugs. I didn't even go see all the armor and all the cool shit, which it was supposed to be for the next day. But I walked home and I went out for Korean in Chinatown, as one does, I guess. I dropped a little Korean on them, and it turned out the waiter was from Jeollanam-do, which is the same province I lived in when I lived in Yosu. It was a pretty slow night, so they just kept pumping soju my way and side dishes. And I left absolutely just dripping drunk on something I don't usually drink. And the next morning, I woke up like, oh boy, this is about to be a thing. I don't regret it, but that's why I pretty much stick to the rum and Diet Cokes or a few beers. Or as they say here in Three Forks, pussy-ass White Claws. Like, I know, like an old pitcher, like I know what balls I can still pitch and what ones are out of my wheelhouse. So that was not the best next day. The plan was just, because I'm a world-class procrastinator, I extended my taxes to mid-October. Of course, I didn't finish them before the trip. It was my last full day in Philly, and I'm going to go back to the museum and walk around a bit, and it just turned into this all-day cage match with TurboTax instead of, seeing the museum. Never again. By the time I wrapped it, it was like 8 p.m. I go out for cheesesteak and a slice and, watch a little football, which, by the way, it just comes on so late on the East Coast. Mountain time really is the sweet spot for watching sports for both coasts, right? That Blue Jays-Dodgers game that went to 18 innings in the World Series, that ends at like 3 a.m. on the East Coast. The next morning, I finally gave in and rented one of those bikes instead of walking everywhere. So I rode down to the Liberty Bell and Independence Hall thinking maybe I'd go inside. I lived like 2 blocks from it years ago, and I just never went. Of course, I get there, the government is shut down at the time. But a nice grandma who only spoke Mandarin took a great photo of me with these big dramatic clouds behind the building. After that, I hoofed it back to the Airbnb, checked out, grabbed a Dunkin' bagel with cream cheese for that Amtrak ride to D.C., which honestly is just a great way to live, not having to deal with cars at all. The woman who sat next to me on the train, probably, late 40s, she's working on a screenplay, which is kind of cool, but I didn't want to get caught reading it. I do want to know what happened to the kid. I'd underpacked, of course, like I said, and I noticed my pants had this big cheesesteak stain on them. I knew I'd never see this woman again, and I guess, I don't know, my pride made me self-conscious, so I covered it with my phone, and I stared out the window instead of scrolling. I guess it's for the best. Just take a little break there from the fucking brain rot. The Amtrak ride is smooth. Delaware remains the most unremarkable state to look at. Rolling into Baltimore was wild. Like those endless rows of crumbling row homes, still some, like they look lived in, like straight out of The Wire, still. It's surreal, like a post-apocalyptic neighborhood where life just kept going anyway. My friend Josh's wife, Amy, she picks me up at Union Station right by the Capitol building, and we drive to Northern Virginia where they live. He's in tech, she's an attorney. They work hard, and they do really well, and I'm proud of them for it. I'm really proud of him. Back in high school, he's opening Burger King in our little Montana town at 5 a.m. I was probably getting into trouble. He'd be bashful about it, but now, he drives a Beamer and wears a Rollie. I'm walking around with cheesesteak stains on my jeans. We did cruise along the banks of the Potomac, the trees just starting to turn. Beautiful rolling hills broken up by horse pastures and these Downton Abbey-type columned super mansions. Amy said those are like probably Russian oligarch money. That's like beyond rich. That's dirty, like wealth. I told her about the Hall of Fame ceremony, and it's just like how it was unremarkable. Nobody really gave a shit who I was, and they didn't really do a good job hosting it. Again, not give a shit about me, but it's just like, I just feel like they bungled the event. Nobody really cared who anybody was until I gave my speech, and I thought I did really well, and then everybody suddenly likes me. And it's like, Amy's like, yeah, that's classic East Coast. What have you done for me lately? So that kind of softened it, and I feel like maybe I went too hard earlier on the committee. Like, they weren't bad people. It was just, I just think it was unceremonious. I don't know. I taught in the hood in Philly and co-managed a tutoring center in Flatbush, Brooklyn. So I never really saw that side of the New York rat race, that hyper-polished world of climbing over itself. Virginia, it was a new state for me. It didn't really look that different from other parts of the East Coast. Where Josh and Amy lived, it was tucked into the trees, and it was like pastures. It felt a little bit like upstate New York. It was a relaxing few days, reconnecting with my oldest and best friend in that quiet, wooded setting. When Josh and Amy were working, as so many people in the workforce do, it's sort of hybrid. I just tried to stay out of the way, played with the kids, rode their Peloton one morning, totally into the ground, did some reading on their sunlit deck, and waited for the windows of free time we could share. We made the most of them, visited the Jefferson and MLK memorials between preschool pickups and birthday parties, and eating what turned out to be the sneakiest, best meal, low-key, best meal I had on the entire trip. It was in the sushi, with the halal, with the pizza, the cheesesteaks. It was a magical little chain chicken restaurant called Bojangles. I really admire Josh and Amy greatly. They do well, but nothing about them feels showy or outside of nouveau riche or anything, except there were these massaging seats in her Benz, which I fully endorse. And even with Josh's long hours, he still handles the kids' bedtime routine, so does she. And I respect the hell out of them for that. It was a treat pulling up for school pickup and seeing the mix of kids and parents and teachers. A genuinely diverse and thriving community in a place I'd have assumed was deep red and monolithic, kind of like where I am. It was just a nice reminder of what the rest of the country could look like or does look like when you get outside your own little echo chamber. The weekend brought Kai's birthday party, sushi, by his choice. They bring out an acre of fish and rice. Somewhere in there on this trip, I got sucked into sports betting on my phone, which is clearly up there with social media as a modern plagues for young men. How fucking addictive this FanDuel thing was. They hooked me up with $300 of house money after my first $5 bet hit. The next thing I know, I'm on ChatGPT strategizing, small bets on slight underdogs, occasional parlays, and enough juice to keep it interesting. I did actually make $240 doing this. But I see it's the same business model as the hustlers and the wire. Give them a little free taste and then let them lose it once they're hooked. I don't know how this thing is going to stay legal that much longer, especially with the betting scandals already hitting the NBA and the Major League Baseball and all that. So I don't know. It just feels what fashion magazines and Photoshop did to women's self-image decades ago. Just another comparison trap designed to keep men distracted and broke. To summarize the trip, I honestly wouldn't mind living in New York, even Philly again. I finally get museums. I loved not having a car. Diversity is actually kind of cool. The Catskills Fly Fishing Hall of Fame needs to up its game. And I love my friend and his family. But maybe Bojangles a little more. And I can't wait to travel again. It's been too long since 2021, when I was caring for my mom through her final months. And since then, just rehabbing the building, running the library board and doing things like this. It felt good to do something just for me. And for my dad, too. Thanks for sticking with me through this, guys. I'll see you next time.
In Cafe Queen, past the bars, underneath the sky of stars, the city's pulse, a rhythmic beat in every corner.